This is Emma Frost from Marvel Rivals AAA game character. Looks amazing. And this is the character I recreated in less than 1 day with only free AI tools, paying $0. And I also recreated Jeff. Why? Because he's really cute and his name is Jeff.
My name is Jeff.
It is indeed crazy what you can do with AI right now. But many still think that 3D AI tools are extremely expensive. So that is why in this video I'm gonna show you whole process how I recreated this Marvel Rivals character from scratch, from concept images, generating 3D models, texturing, rigging, and finally setting Toon shader in Blender and doing these amazing renders. And I'm gonna use only free tools that you can go and test right away. I would really appreciate your support, guys, with hitting that like and subscribe button. Let's get started. Alright, so the first step, of course, we're gonna need reference images. And in my case, we do have already the concept. We do have Emma Frost from Marvel, so we are gonna recreate it. If you're doing your unique character, that's even better. I also have some videos on my channel how to come up with the right reference and get it done. In my case, we're jumping to the step where we're gonna need to extract some parts to generate 3D models, right, and then combine them. For this one, we're gonna of course use Google Gemini with free Nano Banana. You can access it in AI Studio for free. Now here's the amount of parts that I created, and it's very important, and let me explain you why. So first of all, the body and the head separate. This is because we want more control, more details. When you generate one focused object, you get more details, more clarity, and later we're gonna also need to make it low poly because we're creating game character, and that really helps to get the right quality. Same goes for hands. If you're gonna generate hand with body, most likely there will be not enough details, some fingers might be merged, etc. But if you generate hands alone, that will make it easier to texture, the fingers will be split, and later doing low poly version will be not an issue. I also did that for boots, for earring, and for the part of the dress. And yeah, hair of course. I always recommend separating hair if it's a bit longer than bald. References done. Next step is generate 3D models. We're gonna start from high poly because I'm gonna show you how to make really good quality. For this one, of course, we're gonna use high 3D, or recently known as Hunyuan 3D. They're quite generous, giving you up to 20 free generation per day, and speaking secretly, you can create multiple accounts, or you can even create it on global and Chinese version on the same email. Altogether, that's a lot of assets that you can create. So as I said, we're gonna start with high poly generation. So I'm gonna keep the poly count 1.5 million. In this case, you can use single image, multiple image. It's not necessary multi-image will get better results. Sometimes I try single instead of multi and compare the results. So give it a try, spend all free credits, and get best generation that possibly can. And by the way, since we do stylized art here, let me do a quick recommendation. There is a platform called PixAI, built specifically for anime-style AI generations, and it's absolutely blown up in Japan. Over 15 million registered users, and it even reached top 1 in Japan's App Store graphics and design. The quality comes from their flagship model, Tsubaki 2. It's trained specifically for anime, so characters came out accurately and staying consistent between generations. I tested it and quality is absolutely outstanding. A few more things to notice is how good the prompt helper works here. You just activate it and your generation will be improved significantly without going to ChatGPT and asking for better prompts. Moreover, there's thousands of LoRa's trained for specific characters or styles, and you can access all of them. Or for example, this new amazing feature, character sheet. You drop one image and you get full reference sheet out, expressions, outfits, details. Looks just amazing. And the good news, it's free to try and they give a lot of free daily credits. And by my link in the description, you're gonna receive additional 20,000 credits. Alright, now back to Diamond Lady. I'm gonna stick with 1.5 million because we're going to do high poly, and in the next step we're gonna adjust them before we take that to the low poly. But for some assets we can actually save some and generate them low poly right away, which you can do here in laboratory. You can go to select 3D Smart Topology, and here you can drop the image and create low poly textured version right away, which I did for hair and earring. And look at the results. Here's the high poly version, only geometry, and here is the low poly version. version. It is only 400 polygons. I think pretty cool. And here I did same thing with the hair. So here is 500,000. So here's the high poly version of the hair, and this one I generated right away low poly. So keep that in mind, but for the rest of the parts, we're gonna still start with the high poly. Okay, so the whole process here is quite fast. Each generation take maximum 2 minutes. Together with the texture, geometry goes faster. Altogether, we can spend here like 15 minutes. Now let's take all good generations to Blender and assemble them in one high poly character. I would compare this step with the classical sculpting step, and since we're gonna work with high poly meshes, we're gonna use sculpting tools. So the whole thing that we need to do here is to combine all parts into one body, make sure that the proportions is right. We can actually drop the original reference here, adjust the proportions. With sculpting tools, we can also go over geometry, smooth some stuff, add some extra details if needed. Also for symmetric characters, I recommend to do mirroring, which I actually did for the body. That will save you time on texturing, on low poly, etc. But if this step look a little bit scary, it's not. So there's really few things that we're gonna need to use. We're gonna do some cuts and replace parts, which goes for hands, for example. We have the body with hands. We're gonna remove hands and put the separate hands because those hands have more details. We also mirrored the body. From sculpting brushes, you don't need to know all of them. Just few is enough, like smoothing. And my favorite of all time is definitely elastic grab. So you can just adjust the shape, make sure every part aligned. There are some other brushes that can add some creases or flatten some areas. They're very, very easy to get known. But if you are absolutely new to this, on my YouTube channel, you can find free videos about sculpting low poly. I explain just bare minimum of tools that will help you to process these AI generated meshes and get the result fast. So if you're gonna pay attention carefully, you're gonna see that I'm pretty much reusing these 5-6 tools in whole this time lapse, and altogether is not that long. Try it once and you're gonna be amazed how easy it is. Align shapes, cut what's not needed, little bit of smooth, little bit of details. Mirror hand, boots and body, maybe something else depending on your character. For example, hair, I'm gonna not mirror because hair is asymmetric. Okay, and lastly, I adjusted face a little bit, made lips a bit smoother, and the chin. Chin was a bit too peaky, I would say. So with the elastic grab, again, just a few moves and we have a perfect shape. Very nice. And yeah, we're gonna adjust the nose as well a little bit. And that's pretty much it. We do have our heroine assembled really nicely. From here on, we can consider high poly done. Next one gonna be low poly. For this one, we're gonna go back to Hunyuan 3D Studio, and here there is a Retopology tab. So the plan is very simple. We're gonna export each piece by piece and import here. I really like 3D Studio because you can load any model, even generated outside of Hunyuan. You can use it for any of your needs. Here you can select the amount of polygons that you want and whether it's a trees or quads. We're gonna go with low and with quads because wireframe is important, right? Let me know in the comments. And here you can see what results I got. They are not 100% perfect. There are some issues, some artifacts usually, but they're very easy to address. Let me show you how. So first of all, generate all of them and bring back to Blender. The coolest thing is that they are fit exactly in the same position as high poly. Now we can go one by one and check what's going on. To start with, first thing I recommend is to mirror parts that should be mirrored. In our case, I did the body, so I'm gonna mirror it again for low poly as well, and keep the modifier until I fix that part. So for fixing, I recommend RetopoFlow add-on, which is free and you can get it on the GitHub. That is so far the most amazing add-on to work with topology, and it's probably the easiest to get started. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go through mesh and see where it's not dense enough or maybe where there's like a holes or problems. Also, the reason why I'm not skipping this part, because I want to do a baking of normal map and ambient occlusion map that will add really nice look on top. For some simple objects, you most likely gonna skip it. But for some big, especially if you intend to do baking, I recommend this workflow. I tested a lot, guys. This one is the fastest, guaranteed. Okay, and after 5 minutes in RetopoFlow, we fixed almost all the issues. Similar way, you can go over each part, but I don't really need that because some of them are actually great. great. The second thing on this step is that we're gonna also need to do UV. UV basically is unwrapping our 3D model into 2D so we can apply textures. And luckily for us, Hunyuan, and this is crazy, but even some paid tools do not have this UV unwrapping with AI. But free Hunyuan Studio has it somehow. So here the process is basically the same. You can upload your model and do the UV unwrapping. I'm gonna be honest, it's not really working every time. And it only works with low poly. Do not try to unwrap high poly. That will probably crash it because there will be too many islands. And for some parts, it actually can make sense to do the unwrapping yourself, because basically that's just about adding some seams and then unwrapping that. In my case, I also have additional free add-on for Blender called UV Packer. Since I'm 3D artist for 10 years already, I got used to it. That one will help you to pack your islands nicely to fit the texture and again use texture space more efficiently. And one last thing, I almost always recommend to recreate eyes with simple spheres, because that is like 1 minute process, always the same. Just create a sphere, cut it in half or maybe not cut depending on your face, then unwrap it like smooth. That will allow you to go and generate eye texture and apply it here, which we're gonna do later. And after I have low poly models done, I want to do baking. And here's how it's done. In Blender, you basically select high poly and low poly. Then you go to cycles, that render engine, just switch to it and select the map that you want to bake. You create that map, select it. And for example, I want to bake normal or ambient occlusion map. The baking is almost instant and we can then preview that. So here you can see baked ambient occlusion and normal map from high poly to low poly. This what you see is low poly model. How cool is that? And by the way, baking is optional depending on what style you're doing, etc. But if you want to know more about that, on my channel, there is a short video explaining basics about baking. And with that, it means that low poly and UV done. Next step, texturing. But before we jump, let me remind you guys that I recently launched my first 3D AI course that cover whole pipeline, how to create 3D character from scratch with AI tools. Course is built for the beginners and the idea is very simple. I give you 10% of 3D skills and knowledge about best 3D AI tools so you can achieve 90% of any of your goals, whether that's for game development, 3D printing or else. We already got amazing feedback from hundreds of students. Link will be in the description. Okay, so for texturing, we're gonna use Modif. That is an amazing, best-in-a-class tool for texturing. It works pretty simple and you can still use it unlimited for free. The only thing that on free tier you cannot create private projects. So how does it work? We're gonna upload all objects all together that we prepared, low poly objects here in Modif, and we're gonna go to texture tab. I also gonna upload all the references that I got, so you can click that plus button and upload. The process is very simple. We're gonna select one object and select the reference and press generate. That will generate the projection of the current view. And we do have few options how to actually put it back on the 3D model. I recommend to always start with add as layer, which is this button. So you can iterate and get the base done very quickly. And as you can see, I just textured head in just 1 minute. Also, one cool thing here, since it's based on reference, you can create additional references right here by pressing generate variations. And it works similar to Nano Banana. Let's say we're going to need to create back view to get the texture projection there. And it's very important to select right references before you generate the image. And just like that, you can see the face is done. That's the process I'm going to repeat. Make sure that it generates what I want. There are also additional settings so you can control if you want to create lit or diffuse maps. It can also try to generate texture that is not affected by light. However, projection alone will not be enough to texture nicely big stuff. That's why there's another tool called in painting. It works pretty simple. We paint an area that has artifacts, maybe there is a seam, maybe there is just broken texture, and then we generate another texture the same way, but this time we do not project texture, but in paint that specific area to apply the fix. And that's pretty much all. You don't really need anything more. I mean, there are some additional tools like masking, etc. that will help you to address some issues, but in reality, I almost never use them. I can just mention there's fill missing area button that after you do projection, you might miss some small parts and it can logically fill that with color. So take a look on that. And for mirrored object, by the way, you can save time texturing only one object. So as simple as this, we just textured whole Emma Frost character. I mean, that is absolutely insane. I never thought I will be able to do anything of that. I was really always bad at characters really, but with this workflow, I can do anything. So marking texturing as done. Now let's bring it all to Blender and do some final steps. Step number 1, let's export our character to FBX and take her to AccuRig for rigging purposes. I really enjoy using AccuRig recently. Again, like I'm surprised with the quality. It always does job really nicely and it gives more accurate results than Mixama. Mixama is also an option, but I recently just stopped using it. So the process is quite simple. You just set markers for the body, for the hands, and then you got the character rigged and you can apply some animations, etc. What's great about it, you can export it with the right skeleton for Unreal Engine, Unity, or Blender. The tool itself, it's free. What's not free is some additional animations. They do provide you with basic set of animations, but that's not a lot. However, you don't really always need that. Depending on the complexity of your character, you always want to go into weights and fix a little bit. Like in my case, we do have boots too close. Actually, that is my fault. I should generate the character in slightly more spread legs to avoid these issues, but we have what we have, and I just fixed that in weights paint later. I can anticipate you most likely will face some small issues there and there. Sometimes there is an issue in armpits, or your character might have a tail or long hairs, and this will need to be addressed. That's why a free video on my channel introducing basic stuff you need to know to get it done quickly. Alright, before we finalize it, final touch on texture is that we need to generate eye, and I recommend to do it simple. Again, I'm gonna drop the reference to Gemini and ask to create a square eye texture, and that is like super easy to do. So we got this eye texture and we're gonna bring it to Blender, and since again I created the sphere, so and unwrap that by like cutting it in half, it's quite easy to do. We just gonna take and position the UV a little bit like this, and again our eyes are mirrored, so that's why that took like just 2 minutes to get done. Well, and at this stage everything is done, but to achieve this same comic style look as we see in the game, we're gonna need the right shader. Again, depending on the engine that you're gonna use. For example, there are Toon shaders for Unreal Engine, for Unity, but I want to do some renders in Blender, and I found this shader for Blender, which is again free. Thanks a lot to this guy. It works pretty simple. It just adds this shader where we connect our maps. And what I like specifically about this one is that it has this comics effect on shadows, you know, like these dots, slashes, dashes, everything like that. And finally, let's set the right pose, same as posture. How cool is that? So here is the colored version. I mean, super cool. And also, since we're doing like game ready model, here is the low poly version. Let me know what you think about the mesh. Oh, and I almost forgot about GF. And yes, I did GF exactly the same way, but I just skipped the rigging part. And here's the final result, guys. So let me know in the comments if you need more videos like this. And if you enjoyed it, hit that like and subscribe button. I really appreciate your support. That was Steph. See you in the next one.